This is Let's Talk Teens, a parenting podcast sharing tips on raising amazing teenagers. We are both certified life coaches that have worked with teenagers as coaches, mentors, and teachers. We are sharing what we have found to work best when dealing with teens and tough issues.
Let's talk teens with Abbi and Cheree. This is episode 28, Protecting Your Teen's Brain.
When I talk about protecting your teen's brain, sometimes I get parents that look at me like deer in the headlights just because they're like, what do you mean? Like literally wearing a helmet? And I'm like, well, yeah, that's important too. But I also mean, um, we've got to protect our teen from some of the experimental behaviors that are so normal, so a part of the teenage experience, and also protecting our teens' thoughts. So I kind of want to do an overall, like, here's some physical things you can do to literally protect your teens' brains, talking drugs, tobacco, alcohol, wearing a helmet, right? Those things. But also, what are some things that we can do to protect our teens' thoughts and the things that they allow into their brain? So, Cheree, what have been some of your experiences with those topics?
Abbi, I just think they're so equally important. I love that you're talking about like that physicality of, obviously the damage that can happen from drugs and alcohol and any of those things, wearing a helmet when you're wearing a motorcycle. And also one that maybe you didn't mention, but that fits right in there is pornography versus really protecting your mind from those thoughts. And, being coaches, life coaches, we know the power of our thoughts and where they really can lead us and how, you know, what we think about, we bring about. And so really being mindful about what our thought patterns are and where they lead us.
What's interesting is that we kind of have this unique culture here in Utah. So Cheree and I are both in Utah, and you just need to know from me right now, I love Utah. I born here, I'm gonna die here. I think it's the best state in the whole world. You can't convince me otherwise, okay? So I just know I have that bias. But we do have some unique research that's been done here in Utah, and I just think that this is such an interesting find. So when you survey all of the youth here in Utah, we do sharp surveys where they poll students and they just are trying to get a pulse of the cultural climate, right? Are our youth drinking? Are they eating meals with their family, right? How prevalent are drugs, right? Like we're just trying to get a pulse so that we can do good things in the community. And what they found with our youth here in Utah that's unique is that they reported we were off the charts. We were doing awesome parents on all the things of talking to our teens about drugs and about all these, things that could get them in trouble. But when it came to talking to our youth about alcohol, we just fell off the face of the earth. And so what happened is the researchers, they went to the parents and they said, are you having conversations to your youth about drinking underage? Because they thought, well, maybe the teens aren't reporting this, or maybe there's a miscommunication somewhere. And the parents said, oh no, they get that conversation at church. So I don't need to talk to them about not drinking underage because they just know that because we're a church going people and that's something that they talk about at church. Well, then these researchers went to church leaders in the community and they said, hey, are you talking to youth about not drinking underage? And they said, oh no, that's a conversation they should be having at home with their parents. So do you see here we have this huge gap because we have a really unique faith-based culture here in Utah that we just assume, if you're a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, you're not going to drink. So don't even talk to your kids about not drinking underage because why would they ever dare do that? They would never upset you or try something like that, right? And so I bring up that because I'm sure you're sitting here going, oh, my youth knows that. Oh, they know I'd be so upset if they drink underage or, had a sip of alcohol at somebody's house, or they don't even have a friend whose parents have alcohol in their cupboard, right? Talk to your youth. I know, like, we know that this is probably built into your family rules and your family culture and the culture of where you are growing up. But please, please, please talk to your youth about drinking underage and just how important it is that they stay away from alcohol and tobacco and other drugs. I think it's really important as parents to remember that our teen brain is literally wired for risk taking and experimentation. It is just part of what their brain wants to do. And so, the number one thing that you can do to protect them from risky behaviors is to talk them through it. So, say, hey, Now, I listened to this podcast and she reminded me to talk to you guys about we have family rules about not drinking underage or not drinking period, right? And making sure we actually have those conversations because if we just leave it up to church leaders, school, society, guess what? It's not happening. This needs to be something that we as parents have checked in with our youth, even though we pray and hope, I hope my kids never have alcohol in their life, but it's something I need to talk to them about, just knowing that we're risk-taking individuals.
Oh, I think that's so fascinating that that really does happen. It's like, oh, church is going to teach them. Oh, family is going to teach them. Oh, school is going to teach them. And we're all kind of passing the buck of who needs to talk about it. And really, wouldn't it be great if everyone did, right?
Mhm.
Everyone needs to be talking about it and not just talking about, okay, don't drink and don't vape and don't get into drugs and all these things, but why? I think one of the things I've noticed the most with teenagers, young adults, this generation is they want to understand the whys, not just don't do it, but why you wouldn't want to get involved in alcohol, why you wouldn't want to take your first drink, what the effects are on your brain, on your body, how it can affect your future, and really help them see that big picture. I think that's really important, not just this is our rule, don't do it, but why it's our rule and why we believe so strongly about this, whether it's a religious based thing or whether it's, the effects it's going to have on your life in the future or both. I think it's really important to have that discussion.
And to hit it from both ends of the emotional side of things, of let me tell you why this matters to, me as your parent and why let me tell you the story about your uncle Joey, right? Like the emotional side of things, absolutely, but also hit it from the science side. And this comes from my days before being a life coach, Cheree. I got my degree in advertising. I worked at this fabulous advertisement agency and just by the luck of it, I got to work on a lot of prevention campaigns here in Utah. So I worked on the anti-underage drinking campaign, the anti-opioid like awareness, right? That those are awesome, but they have to be used as directed. And then I got to work on the Way to Quit campaign here in Utah, where we help educate people on how to quit smoking tobacco. And what was amazing is our budget for big TV spots had to be cut in two. And half of the budget had to go to a TV spot that was an emotional one that would pull at your heartstrings and show a mom who wants to hang out with her kids, but she has to go outside and take her smoke break and she misses a magical moment, right? We had to spend half of our budget doing that because research showed that that worked. That made people go, you know what? It's time for me to quit. And then half of our budget had to be spent on what we would call scare tactics, right? The science of these are the ads that we all remember of the egg being, grilled on the side of the road, and this is your brain on drugs. And that's because the science is important and those facts are hard hitting. So hit it from both sides. That way, too, you're not hitting your teen with just a soapbox lecture of why I think this is bad, but they can look at the facts themselves. And we're treating them as an adult as we say, okay, let me lay out some research and science to you as why pornography, drugs, alcohol, tobacco, marijuana, vaping, like why all this is bad and why we as a society have decided that these things are not good for you.
Yeah, and I think sometimes with teenagers, it's okay to have that shock and awe. I think they kind of need that, not just like, oh, it could do this, but show them some shock and awe. Show them some stuff that, sometimes it feels scary to show them what could happen, but I think sometimes they need to see that. I think they need it, like the egg on the grill or whatever,
Yes, yes.
like they kind of just need to see that to really understand, okay, this is a big deal. It's not just my mom and dad being like, don't do this. There's, we need to see the effects of it. We need to see what could happen if we chose that. And I love to teach teenagers when we talk about these substances that every choice we have either gives us more freedom or less freedom. And what happens when we get addicted to porn or drugs or alcohol, it really does create less freedom in our lives and less of how we want our life to go. And it doesn't give us more freedom. And I think that sometimes is really helpful for them to see that in the moment it feels good, but it actually ends up giving us less freedom. And this is why, and this is why, and this is why, and help them see that road.
Yes. More choices, right? We want them to have as many choices for their life as possible. Now, Okay, now we know, right? We're going to talk to them about this, right? We make sure that there's no gap between, oh, I thought you were talking about it and I thought school was talking about it, right? We've talked to our youth about our rules, our family expectations, our expectations because of faith or society or the rules that we're going to follow. But now we have to follow it up with parental monitoring. Now, Cheree, I don't know about you, but I get so much pushback from my Instagram anytime I post about monitoring. And do you know what's hilarious to me? It's teenagers leaving really mean, nasty comments that say, no good parent would monitor, or you guys don't trust us teens, right? And I just always kind of laugh because as a teen, it's no fun to have somebody monitor you, right? Think about as an adult, like we hate to have a boss or manager breathing down our neck, and we don't want to be that. But as a parent, it is our role, it is our job, it is part of our parental responsibilities to be monitoring our kids. And I work with way too many parents that have said things like, "Oh, I just want my teen to know that I trust them, or they're a good kid. I don't need to worry about them," or I worry about our relationship if they knew that I was looking at their social media or if I had access to their phone. And I feel so strongly about this that even the best kid in the whole world needs to know that their parent can look at their phone.
Mhm.
Even our most trustworthy son or daughter that we're not worried about needs to have that healthy dose of fear that, ooh, mom could see my text to this young man or this girl that I'm being mean to in the group chat. And I had a real life lady in my neighborhood. She shared this with me. She said, I read my teens, their phones all sleep in the kitchen, which I love, and they know mom has to know your password to get in. And she says, they know I randomly will go through their stuff. She says, I don't try to read things word for word, but I try to get a sense. And she said that one of her daughters, she noticed this group chat with all these girls, and they were chatting about this other girl. And they were like, ugh, I don't want her to join the dance group. We already have too many people, right? So, this chat that's real life, I think we've all had this situation happen where somebody wants to join or, friends aren't vibing. And I love that the mom read this and she went to her daughter and she said, "Now listen, hey, I'm concerned about this chat with these girlfriends. Like, tell me more." And her and this daughter, they didn't see eye to eye because the mom said, "You have to invite her to your friend group." And the daughter was like, "Mom, there's not enough room. We'd have to take two cars." And she's like, "I don't care, right? Like, you need to be kind." And so I loved this example of, did she find her daughter doing anything horrible? No, right? But she found an opportunity to go talk to her daughter and help coach her through what we might call potentially mean girl behavior, right? And say, listen, this is not how I want you to act with other people. I want you to be kind. I want you to always have more room. And so I thought, what a cool conversation that happened because that mom was monitoring.
Yes. I used to tell my kids that it's the most loving thing I could do for them is to check in their phones and look at those things and monitor them and have rules. And they would say, but our friends' moms don't do this. And I'm like, gosh, don't you feel so good that I love you more than your friends' moms love them? And I mean, it was kind of a joke, but it was like, I love you so much. I'm going to do this. If I didn't care, it would be easier for me not to check it because
Hmm.
it takes my time. B, I get so much pushback and from the teen, and it, can create some problems. And none of us like that. We don't want to fight with our teens. And so sometimes we're like, oh, it's easier not to check on them. It's easier just to trust them because then there's no conflict in the relationship. But I had to remind myself, I love my child so much. I'm willing to have this conflict with them because it's just something that important to me that I'm gonna check their phones. I'm gonna look for these things because I love them, because I care. I'm gonna have these rules because they're that important to me. And if I didn't care, I wouldn't spend the time on it. I wouldn't spend the energy because we all know it is not fun sometimes to have these conversations or this conflict with our teen. But we love them so much, we're willing to sit in that.
And it's a crucial part of that relationship of this is gonna be an unpopular opinion, okay? So hear my heart on this, not, it can sound harsh. So hear my heart on this. this is not a relationship of equals, right? Like the
Yeah.
parent is in charge of that teen because sometimes parents will really get so bent out of shape about this, and that's because they're kind of viewing this relationship as of one of equals, of where it's like, well, you can't do that, or don't you have this trust? And I'm like, well, in relationships of equals, absolutely, right? Like I don't have a right to ask about that of my coworker or my friend, right? But I do of my child, right? Because I am in charge of them. I have a stewardship here that I have to protect. And so if you're kind of feeling that, like, oh, I don't know if I could do that, it might be because we've slipped into this thought of a relationship of equals instead of a relationship of stewardship, of my job while you're in my home is to keep you mentally, emotionally, physically safe. And how I can do that best is by monitoring, by setting boundaries, and by checking in. And so this is scary. This is hard. If you have preteens right now or even younger kids, guess what? Your job got 1,000 times easier because if you set this precedent the moment you have a phone or the moment they get a car or the moment they're hanging out at other friends' house, if you set the precedent of I call, I meet their parents, you check in your phone with me. We go over things on your phone. Way easier battle. Now, if you're sitting here going, well, crap, my child's older and I've never done this before, guess what? You can start today. And yes, like Cheree mentioned, you're going to get some pushback. It might be a nasty couple of weeks, right? But it is worth it. This is something that is worth it because of that stewardship that we have over our children.
Absolutely. And we've had more experience, life experience. That's why we're not equals. And our prefrontal cortex is all the way developed and theirs isn't. And we really can't expect our teenagers to really think through the consequences of their choices all the time. They won't, they can't. That's why they need us to be their parent, to love them enough to have these rules and to check in with them. It really is the most loving thing that you could do for your child. I'm with you, Abby, all the way on that. Even though, this might be unpopular opinion, especially amongst teens, it's really important.
It is. So parents, you got this, right? We're protecting our teens' brain. I always think to myself, I my job is to keep them physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually safe, right? And if I have to do battle to do that, I got to do battle. So I'm wishing you the best of luck, right? We're going to get mud on us. It's going to be challenging, but I think that's part of what we signed up for, right? When we said, I will take this stewardship on of being a parent, and it's not always going to be easy, but it's worth it to fight these battles for those we love most. So, well, parents, we hope that these tips help you out when it comes to protecting your teen's brain, and maybe you'll have a shift of thinking as you think of it in that way of we're protecting our child's brain. So, we wish you the best of luck, mom and dad. You got this. Thank you for listening to Let's Talk Teens with Cheree Murdock and Abbi Winslow. If you are looking for more tips to help your teenager, here's where you can find us. You can find Cheree Murdock on Instagram at Cheree Murdock Coaching or on her website, ChereeMurdock.com. You can find me, Abby, on Instagram as Abbi Winslow or on my website, AbbiWinslow.com. Please rate and review our podcast and share with a fellow parent. Thanks for listening.